Hey, Justin.
Hey, Cameron.
How's it going?
Going great. How about you?
Good. You covered the label with your hand, but I know that's a root beer.
Yes, it is. It is a dad's root beer.
Delicious.
I'm
I'm
not a
surprised
dad.
you're even able to find a dad's root beer. I haven't seen a dad's root beer in any grocery store in years.
When was the last time you were in a grocery store?
Well, that's a good question.
Wait, didn't you go to like the Piggly Wiggly once?
Yeah. No, I, so in these unprecedented times,
Oh God, it's another friggin' ad.
you know, we've got to be there for each other and blah, 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 all the other, um, you know,
Lease is starting at
we're
four
dealing
forty
with.
one a month.
God.
During these unprecedented times, we
Yeah.
are here for you to get a Lexus.
Yeah. Steph sent me a meme. It was like a Mazda commercial, and then it's Mazda's logo over Michael Scott. And it says, "Good luck paying for this on your 0 month salary, babe,"
Oh man.
with zero benefits.
Uh,
Um,
but hey, at least we
yeah,
have stuff to talk about now.
we definitely do. We haven't really sat down and had any hockey conversations since before all of this. It's been months.
Wow, you are truly a Southerner now because you won't even say it by its name. You just say all of this, or you could say all that shit that's going on, or all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Well, I don't want to get too in depth into the actual situation going on because we're not trying to be political on this podcast.
No, we're not. We're trying to be
Yeah.
hostile.
Yeah. It's a very polarizing issue for some reason.
For some reason, it is. Yeah. Oh, I'm just gonna take a sip of root beer.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, just like we kind of talked about it, but the whole thing is weird going from seeing each other at least once a week at hockey to never.
I mean, we play Sea of Thieves together.
Yeah. It's so funny to me that you went from like not even knowing what Sea of Thieves was to now you're like the expert and you play like at least once every 2 or 3 days.
I am nowhere near an expert. I just have fun with my friends.
You know?
But I've gotten a lot better at shooting cannonballs
Yes.
and running us into islands.
Yeah. I am still horrible at fighting other pirates.
Me
Like,
too, man.
you know,
That's where we got to learn to hop. That's
yeah.
the thing. Jumping and shooting, or jumping and swiping.
Yeah. I can't do that.
It's a lot. It's a lot of coordination.
Yeah.
But big news. Big
Oh,
news.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
NHL return to play. That whole thing.
Yeah. So you got to spend a good chunk of time watching the press conference initially, and then I think you said you were on the Zoom call with Gary Bettman, right?
Yeah. So I mean, everyone had access to watching Gary Bettman give a press conference, basically just highlighting everything the NHL return to play. Everything's an if right now. That's why it's not. It's officially the plan, but it's not official that they're starting because you got to wait and see. But basically, the NHLPA, we heard last week that they approved the 2014 format. Two teams voted against it, Tampa and the Carolina, I believe, are the two teams.
Yeah, two
Um,
teams well within the playoffs as well, which I
yeah,
find interesting.
yeah, they didn't like the way direction it was going, and I totally understand that. I see a lot of people making fun of them, but it's like that's why they have a vote to state their case, and I can guarantee you that it wouldn't be unanimous that every player on these teams that voted yes felt the same as it's not unanimous that every player would vote no on Carolina and Tampa. That's why they have the players union, so they can do a vote on that. And I'm actually, if anything, kind of glad it wasn't unanimous because it shows that that they do have power in the vote, that they can question things, that they can go back and make sure this is what they feel is the best option to return to play. Granted, we knew they were going to push as much as possible to return to play no matter what, but I do feel like that it's good that they are able to push that out there and say that they didn't agree with it. Now, anyways, Bettman did explain the whole 2014 format, the hub city, what they're planning to do there. And then later on, an hour later, they did have a Zoom call with him and Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley, where they answered a lot of questions from the media, from Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, to The Athletic. So there's some big time journalists on this Zoom call asking a lot of questions. And I know we'll do a full rundown there, but they talk about everything from daily testing to some costs to broadcast, to when the next season potentially would start and what the plan is for that. So they covered a wide variety of topics that we've all kind of been waiting 2.5 months on to get some news, because nothing's been concrete. It's always been rumors here, rumors there. I heard this or I heard that. We finally got some news. No dates set really firmly, but the assumption is that training camps would start no earlier than July 1st. July 1st is that, I guess, that marked date is what they're looking at for at least training camps potentially start.
So this would be a good time for me just to kind of shoehorn in my opinion on all of this, my hot takes, if you will. Why would they continue to push for this season when it's definitely going to be a detriment to next season? They were talking about pushing it back as far as into July. Like, you're going to have injured players without the ability to rehab. You're going to force them into situations where they're not properly prepared to play. You're putting health at risk for a multitude of reasons. Whether you believe this is as bad as people say or not, it's definitely a health risk. They're not going to have a full proper training camp after taking multiple months off, which is a health risk. And the mental health aspects of it included, where you're separating them from a lot of people and putting them under even further lockdowns and quarantines if travel between the US and Canada is in place. Like, all of this is going to have a very negative impact on next season. Whereas you could just say, enough's enough for this year. We're just going to go into next year and proceed as scheduled for next season. Why drag it out longer than you need to?
Well, here's one thing to throw in as well. We've mentioned the players a lot, but so there's going to be a max of 50 staff per team allowed, okay? Well,
okay.
You're not going to have all of those be players. You have to have some staff. And people will say, well, they're getting paid millions of dollars and blah, 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 blah. Whatever, it's their job. They didn't sign up.
That's 600 people.
Right. So
that's 600 people per hub.
Per hub. So take the players even out of the situation, but you're also going to be removing staff members from their families for potential of a couple months as well, and putting them into situations too. You can't make that argument that they're multi-million-dollar athletes for staff members or people in broadcasts that are camera operators or things like that. And I'm not saying that I hate it. I want hockey to return when it's safe and they deem that it is safe. And that's why I'm glad that they're putting the if thing on this, putting that stipulation of if, and not setting a hard date, because and I know Bettman is really good about addressing the media. He's really good with making sure he's saying the proper thing. He's very well trained in that.
Very calculated.
Very calculated. And if anything, that's a good thing, because you don't want words to be misconstrued, especially when you're dealing with something like this. So I like the if part of this, because things can change. They even said that things can change. If something changes, this is just the format we've decided on, but that's why we're not setting a hard date, because we don't know. This is just a format that we've approved on. It could be July. It could be August before things get going.
Well, that was one thing I liked in the press conference. At one point, Gary Bettman says, I know, as confusing as this may be, he called it out, the playoff format, the draft, it's getting very convoluted and very weird. And which is weird. Yeah, which is fine, but at the end of the day, you're just forcing this thing through. This just feels so forced. You're just cramming this in because you can, and you want that money.
Well, I think there's a lot of aside from the money as well. So money obviously is big for a lot of these leagues, because that's, how they survive, and the NHL can survive with TV contracts and merch purchases, things like that. Minor leagues can't. We all know that, especially you. I know you're a big fan of baseball. Look how hard the minor leagues are getting hit there, because it's all fan driven in terms of butts and seats.
Yeah. AHL also.
AHL, anything that is below the pro level, the top pro level, is going to be hurting. They can't just come back and play without fans in the stands, because they're not going to have money supporting it.
College hockey.
all these things, fan driven have fans come in. Now college hockey, you have plenty of supporters, boosters, things like that helps right there. But in terms of the pro side of things, at least they can survive there. Plus, I think there's pressure from ownership because of money. So it's not like it's coming just from the top. It's pressure from the board of governors. It's pressure probably from TV networks. And then there's also the pressure too of, hey, NASCAR's come back, and look at a lot of people on Twitter that are just like, you know what, I'll watch NASCAR, sure. Because it's a sport that is something that's not a rerun or a replay or something that's on. But the NHL, if it's one of the big ones, when you group it with MLB, NBA, NFL, even MLS now, and then NHL, the big five of the live sport, team sports, go with team sports. And I think they see it as an opportunity and want to take advantage of that, because if they're the first ones to have a full comeback plan, aside from the NBA or even the MLB, then that puts them right in the center of things, right in the center of the sports world, sports talk, things like that. And for reasons that is like, hey, we're going to get coverage and people are going to be forced to talk about us because we're the only thing going right now. And so I think there's a lot of things driving that. And then there's the whole thing that they want to do once they get to phase 4, which is when they can play, which is testing every night, every player, every night. That's going to get very expensive. And a lot of money's going into that. And people start asking the question too of, well, what about other people in the U.S. that could be utilizing those tests?
Yeah.
So there's so many questions around it.
How long before the players get fed up with having a giant rod stuffed up their nose? Like, not for nothing, but hockey players are very fickle, and
I mean, there might be some minor league players that might have to create an OnlyFans with a giant rod stuck up their nose. They got to make money somehow.
There's got to be a buyer out there somewhere for that type of video.
Oh, gosh. Well, speaking of minor league, though, that is one of the things as well that, in terms of rosters, they expect the rosters to be obviously expanded to allow for black aces to come up. So that bodes well for some of these guys in Milwaukee that potentially could be used. And you're thinking of guys like Eli Tolvanen, Rem Pitlick, Alex Carrier, Frederick Allard, even Connor Ingram. I mean, getting a good experience for him too. So there's a lot of question marks still. This was, if anything, it at least hashed out what the plan is that we've been waiting on for weeks, of what the plan is, that this is the approved plan going forward and what they're going to do whenever they can actually do it.
Well, that's the other thing about this. This isn't even the plan. This is the plan to form a plan.
This sounds very Spaceballs. We're going to start selling merch for the plan, right?
Basically, yeah.
The 2014 playoff, the shirt.
Yeah. Now, the one thing about this I do like is the frequency at which games are going to have to come, because they're going to be playing. There's like 12 p.m. until midnight. There's going to be hockey on, which will be fun.
During
and
the
obviously,
workday.
I'll watch the crap out of it. But how long? Like, if a water boy gets sick, like, one water boy is not going to be the only one to get sick. Bobby Boucher gets sick and he gives it to, whoever. It's only a matter of time until this thing gets shut down anyway. Which
that's because COVID-19
has to be
devil.
Yes.
No.
And Mike Milbury. You think Bobby Boucher's mom's a fan of Mike Milbury?
Oh gosh.
I don't know if you saw my tweet, but the first thing I did was block Mike Milbury on Twitter, because he is on Twitter now.
Oh man, I should tweet him the elevator story and see if he remembers.
You should.
But with that, that's why it's going to be unique and interesting, because they even said, Bill Daly said that they're in touch with all of their medical experts and everything of that sort. So if one player gets it, they're saying that should not be cause to shut down everything. But it's like, okay. Because if one player gets it, how long has he had it? Was he asymptomatic, started showing symptoms, things like that? The players, I think, is going to be that part where if a player gets it, they're probably going to look at pausing it, if anything, for a few days, retest, wait for a few days, reinstate, if anything, if everything comes out negative. But staff, that's where I think it's one of those things where they could probably go on more so if it's a staff that is more distant. Like if it's, say, for instance, somebody that's running a camera, they're far away from the rink, they're not in touch with a lot of people. I think that's where the instance is. They'll probably look at, it's isolated. We're going to obviously make sure this incident is here. Anybody's been in contact with them, we'll isolate them and bring in backups to operate these things. Stuff like that will come into place. Yeah.
I like the idea that Greg Wyshynski talked about, where because there won't be fans there, have an app where you could select to cheer or select to jeer. So instead of having it like fake piped in crowd noise, like, I'm a Preds season ticket holder. Give me access to the ability to cheer or boo or whatever for the games my team is involved in.
Well, and it is interesting. I'm curious what's going to happen in the game up side of it in terms of in-game entertainment. Players are obviously used to now having music played. They're used to things taking place during puck stoppages, during TV timeouts, all these types of things. And they did address a little bit of the broadcast. They want to make it very interactive. They don't just want to make it plain broadcast of empty arenas, but they do want to, think of different ways to entertain the people watching on TV to make it a little more interesting. Kind of like what NASCAR's done with having the drone. So you don't have to worry about it crashing into people in the stands. They've been kind of using this drone cam, which has been really pretty cool. It's doing barrel rolls like Star Fox out there. But so I think they'll find different ways to make that a little interactive. And for instance, too, like goal horns. It's this neutral site. Are they going to play a goal horn for whichever team scores because you're used to it? What are they going to do there? And plus, a lot of these arenas, they have their goal horn, which is actually an actual horn that is there. So they're going to have to run it through the system, the audio system, and not the actual horn, because they're also looking at those things too.
And that's something that I think is really important that Matt Duchene talked about on Hockey Central when he talked about, so much throughout the history of the NHL, home ice advantage meant something.
Right.
And no matter what they do to compensate, it's not going to matter as much this season. And it's just not the same. Like I said, you're forcing this when you have a complete inability to make this normal again.
And so I'll spin this as me playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
There's even talk of like, hey, well, maybe this makes them reevaluate the calendar for the NHL and for the league, because the talk is that, hey, maybe not start until November, December, January. Can you imagine the league without a lockout playing a full calendar starting in January with how compressed it already gets before? Now, granted, somebody threw out, well, maybe just less games. Like, no, they want to play the full season starting potentially November, December, January. Now, November, they could pull it off because they compress a lot of things anyways, because you just get rid of All-Star break, bye week, things like that. You shorten the Christmas holiday for them, which is one of the things that makes the league really unique, and I like that these players can actually spend time with family over the holiday, which is great. But that's what there's talk about. So the whole thing I even tweeted out, because they mentioned it, was, can you imagine, like with college football having big games to kick off the season, NASCAR having Daytona 500, is, what if you do kick off the season with the freaking Winter Classic?
Yeah, make it like the Daytona 500. It's the biggest race of the year because it's the first one.
Exactly. So there's potential with that. And then what does it mean? Do they have reevaluate and go, maybe we should start the season in November or December or something like that, or even January, and shift it towards playing into the summer? Now, that would cause a lot of problems when you think of some of these rinks like Dallas, like Nashville, like Carolina, like Tampa, Florida, to where it's really hot and humid in these areas. Vegas should be fine. You can deal with the hot. It's the humidity that's killer for a lot of these sheets of ice. So there's also that question as well, because that means upgrades to arenas would have to happen big time to have that ice played on that much more throughout July and August, which is also going to be a factor, I'm sure, in determining the return to play. That Dallas, for instance, yes, they have lots of ice around there too, but can you imagine all these teams are going to be needing ice for practice purposes, for the games, and things like that too. And as well, they say hub cities. Is it a hub arena? Are there going to be multiple places where they might be playing? So, for instance, Vegas, they're going to have their AHL team coming there, right? Would they be playing in the arena in Henderson as well as Vegas? Is it just the main NHL arena on the Strip? Those are some of these questions as well, because there's probably some of these teams that have other rinks that are decently sized where they could have broadcast crews set up that they could play these games. You don't necessarily have to be in an NHL arena, I don't think, to be able to pull these games off. You just have to have the right locker room space that's safe and things like that. Now, granted, the big thing that's important before anybody goes off is that a lot of these big arenas do have multiple locker rooms. Just like if you've been in the bottom of Bridgestone Arena, you have multiple guest locker rooms that I know we've been in for playing hockey there, because they don't let you dress in the Preds room. But you do sometimes get in the visitor locker room. So it is interesting, too. It'll be depending on so many different factors as well. And then they're saying the hub city, what they're hoping to announce is in 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. I did fact check myself because I'm not a NASCAR fan. The Daytona 500 is the first race of the NASCAR season. I am correct.
You could have asked me that.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. So and that's what makes it fun and exhilarating, because they start advertising it after the last race ends, which is I think usually Homestead in November. It's like, get ready for the Daytona 500 coming in February.
Just to circle back to what you were talking about before I circled back to something else. Like, there's a lot of talk about which city is going to be the hub and all of that, and like, I don't see how a team benefits from being the hub or how a fan base benefits. So I don't really see why you want to be that team, other than like perhaps there's some sort of like, you get some sort of like fee or something like that.
So it's not a hub team, it's hub city.
Yeah.
The reason I switched that up to make sure is that was addressed by Bettman and Daly, as well as that there's even talk of flipping it to where, for instance, if you have a West and an East, then you'd have the East playing the West and the West playing the East, potentially.
Wow.
So there aren't any of those issues of potentially home ice advantages or whatnot. But the thing that they stressed as well is that if there is a team that is also located in the hub cities, for instance, Vegas, and if the West is playing there and it is Vegas, that team would be isolated just like every other team. They wouldn't be able to go home.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the consensus panic, not panic, but just cause for concern is that would they be able to go back to their homes? No, they're all going to have to stay in hotels that are isolated from their families no matter what. So that's why it almost kind of makes sense is, so they really feel like they are on a road trip. Go fly them cross country so they're not like, my family's 2 miles away.
Yeah. Well, like, I saw like fans on Twitter like cheerleading for their city to be the hub city. And I think that's more of what I'm speaking to. Like, how do you benefit? Because it's not like they're going to let anyone in the door.
Local economy more than anything else.
See, but like, how much does it contribute to the economy when there's no fans? Like, sure, the TV dollars and stuff are there, and you're getting like
hotels and food.
Yeah,
that's about it, because there's going to be big time catering probably having to be done, and hotel rooms getting filled, and those hotels are going to want. That's where probably a bidding war with some of these hotels. Is what I expect. I mean, for instance, I'm not saying I'm pushing for Vegas. Vegas to me just makes sense because of the hotel industry, because of how big those hotels are that you can lock wings off to people that have access, because there are so many of these hotels that are connected to that you could basically make it a hub, because boom, right there, you have it all right here. It's locked off to the outside and it's ready to go. And plus, if anything too, who knows? I'm sure this has been thought of. The MGM has a freaking arena inside of the hotel where they host fights all the time. They could build a rink inside of that if they really wanted to. That is fully catered to what they need. And then you don't have empty stands everywhere either. It's more like the Winter Classic where the rink is out in the middle of a field and you can fully pull off a broadcast and do what you want to, where it's like black curtains everywhere if you really wanted to. But that's so many of those hotels in Vegas do have arenas inside of them that they can absolutely build an NHL-sized rink. And you have plenty of space as well for conventions, but you could have locker rooms set up if you really wanted to. I mean, there's so many ways to look at this, and I'm sure they absolutely are. This is all me just kind of spouting out my ideas that I've had crunched into my head for weeks now that I haven't been able to get out, unless it's, playing Sea of Thieves with you or a random person that might text me and go, what do you think about this? But that's why.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting, like, what are they going to put at center ice? Is it just going to be the NHL logo? Like, are they going to do anything to cover up, like, the empty seats?
Oh, they've got to come up with a logo for this thing, because it'll be so unique.
Yeah.
Maybe just put the Stanley Cup in the middle.
That'd be kind of cool.
With a year.
Yeah.
And an asterisk. 2020, boom.
So just as a sports fan in general, I think the biggest loss across sports that we still don't have is that first game where the Houston Astros just get decimated by the fans in the crowd, which
They
was
caused this whole thing to happen.
so. The Houston Astros are cheaters.
Mega cheaters.
Mega cheaters. Their first away game, their first game was going to be in Oakland, California. And, like, that's the rowdiest fan base in baseball. I was looking forward to it so much. And I'm sure I'm going to get it someday. If there's any justice, the first game will be in Oakland, just because it's what was planned. I just need to hear what that sounds like.
Well, I mean, look what they were dealing with during spring training.
Yeah.
People were having to get removed with signs.
Yeah, they were stealing signs from fans now. The other thing that we're missing out on, and it's another thing that can be rectified in some ways, but Shea Weber's 1,000th game, which was scheduled to take place in Nashville.
In Nashville.
Like, you can't. Nashville. See, now it's going to suck because, like, they're going to plan it that way on purpose, but, like, it just lined up perfectly.
Especially because the regular season's over, so the games won't count.
Yeah. So you just have to plan next year's schedule to include that. I wonder if the NHL would play ball with that, but, like, it would have been a special moment.
In terms of if you're doing it for ratings, they never admit it.
Well, yeah,
you would absolutely do it because you're gonna have people watching all over the place. Just because you're gonna have so much media too, that there's gonna be so much around it. Now Weber would probably be like, "Please don't, please don't, please don't." But it's a story, and it's a fun story as well, because there's still so many people that do the whole "what if" situation and scenarios, and it's multiple what ifs. The what if they didn't match the offer sheet? The what if they didn't trade him away? The what if he didn't go and get surgery?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So there's all those what ifs, but I think it makes for a really interesting and fun storyline, and I'd absolutely hope that it still happens like that.
Yeah, like, they'll plan it that way again, and then he'll get injured or some crap.
Please don't. But then there'll be second wave.
Yeah.
And we gotta laugh about it. I'm about to be unemployed in about 6 weeks, so I gotta laugh about it somehow.
You'll be fine. You'll land on your feet.
As long as I land on a foot, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It could be so much worse.
Yeah.
But so let me ask this now, because we know the matchups, what they're set to be.
Yeah.
Arizona being a very interesting, that makes most Preds fans quiver due to history.
Mm-hmm.
And due to how Arizona tends to play the Predators. So
the real question I have is, if the Preds lose, what are their lottery odds?
Gosh, I have not studied it enough yet.
Yeah, like, we're recording this the night of, so, like, that's fine. Like, but honestly, like, I don't think this is their year, even with a rest and a restart.
But
I like
so
this.
Hard. It's so hard to tell that, though, man.
It really is, but
because on paper, we all knew this team should be more competitive than they are on paper.
Yeah. Well, the teams that do really well in this league are the teams that take advantage of not only having good contracts for their veteran players, but also having younger players on entry-level deals. And we don't really have that at the moment. We don't have the space for it. So I don't hate the idea of missing and having some people forced to be sent away, maybe get some younger guys in here, because that seems to be what you need to do to be competitive in this league.
I mean, unless they make a Western Conference championship appearance, I still think there are changes that will be made.
That's the other factor in all of this, is we don't really have the full scope of everything with, you know, how many firings that would have taken place haven't, how many trades that would have taken place won't. You know, there's a whole big butterfly effect in this whole thing where because there was this separation period, it's real easy to forget about how bad certain teams were during the regular season and those underlying problems that were there where they barely squeaked into the playoffs. It's going to be an interesting thing now. How do you gauge that? How do you make those decisions?
And it's going to be interesting, too, when you look at the round-robin games, the top 4 in each conference will play. Can you imagine the number 4 getting the top seed because they go 3-0?
Yeah.
If that happens, and then what happens if you do have the lowest seed beating out the number 5, or you do have Arizona beating out Nashville for the spot in the number 6 kind of thing. So there's all those different what ifs, because Arizona's another team too. On paper, when you see the talent they have, they absolutely should have been a playoff team.
Yeah.
I mean, Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel,
Mm-hmm.
hello. You should be at least competitive enough to be in the playoff hunt for it. And so they're very dangerous already as a team. I mean, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, very good player. So that's what I'm curious, and that's why, gosh, there was a friend that said, I'm just going to call this the 2020 Stanley Cup shit show. Because it's going to be entertaining no matter what, no matter what we feel about them coming back. The fact of the matter is we're going to watch it, and it is going to be interesting because parts of it are going to have very shit show feel-esque to it.
Yeah.
Which makes it
So if they're talking about restarting the 2020 season in January, how long of an off season would we have in there? Like when does this Stanley Cup playoff end?
Bettman said that the goal would be to have at least a couple months off at the end. So I think what they would be looking at is the Stanley Cup final potentially taking place in September. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to have a training camp, and they're going to want a training camp to be probably 2 to 3 weeks, especially because probably 80-90% of the players have not even been able to skate much, if at all, on ice for months straight. Whereas in the regular off season, at least can get on the ice when they want to, and plus do their off ice workouts. Here, that's all they've been regarded to as only off ice. Especially a lot of these guys live in cities where, they don't maybe have their own little practice sheet or know somebody that has one or something like that. They just haven't been able to skate. So for safety purposes, for health purposes, they need to have a long training camp to get back into it. Plus you're going to have these play-in games and round robin games that adds because it's a best of 5. So you say they complete that in a week and a half, potentially, because you're going to want at least a day off in between, like normal. And then you have your 4 more rounds, which they said the first 2 rounds could be best of 5 or best of 7. And that really will change things because you make 2 things best of 7 instead of best of 5. That adds another 2 weeks to things right there. Each one would be a week. So I think that's the potential that you go into September and you think when it normally would be baseball playoffs, it's the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Speaking as your teammate, how many off ice workouts have you been able to take part in?
1, 2. Not much, man. I've been so busy doing day job work during the day, and then when it's the weekend, it's one of those things where I think went on a few walks here and there.
Yeah.
And I'll be full honest, I know it should be better, and not to get down and dreary, but it's like I've been motivated to. With everything going on, I've not been motivated to do much. So I try to keep myself busy doing things like cooking and catching up on TV shows, which I know we'll talk about Clone Wars here in a little bit, and doing some movie marathons, introducing my girlfriend's sister to Star Wars. And doing lots of cooking and things like that. So I know I should put more focus on it, but I just haven't. What about you?
No off ice workouts for me. Not really, but
you've been working a fruit truck.
Yeah. I've been working, let's see, what can I call it without actually calling what it is? The apricot SUV. Why not? Yeah. So I've been working at the apricot SUV.
Physical labor, which if anything is good because you've been sweating at least.
Yeah, and it's a good time. I mean, I've been outside for this job. It's just like, something I'm doing on the weekends, mostly just to get out of the house, make a couple extra bucks.
But if anything, it's activity, and that's something.
Yeah.
Compared to what most people have been able to do.
Yeah, and like I am outside, but wearing a mask for people's comfort, in addition to, just because you tend to be close quarters with people exchanging,
Right.
credit cards and stuff like that. So it's getting hot, but I've been in the shade, luckily. But, it's an interesting perspective because it seems like people just, like they want to do something essential like get food, but they also just want
interaction.
Yeah, interaction in a safe way and being
Yeah.
outside at a distance. Like it's feeding yourself, but it's also feeding your soul, which is good to see.
And and that's one of the reasons sports are important in that matter.
Yeah.
That it does feed your soul in a different way, that competitive human nature of having something to cheer for.
Yeah.
As well, and something to help release those endorphins, which is very important and healthy for you as well. It may stress you the F out, but it's still fun and fun. I mean, you can still have fun, but that's the kind of fun that people are missing right now overall, having competitive team sports, whether it's playing or watching. It's something that people are really missing.
And there's only so many endorphins you can get from the internet.
Especially with free subscriptions.
Yeah. Pornhub Premium.
Free for 30 days. But yeah, man. So I'm going to be very curious the next few weeks as things go on. And then, I mean, there's a question brought up too about media. Now, granted, I didn't tweet it out because it only applies to the media, but it still applies to access in terms of storytelling, which is always important with sports. People want storytelling and hearing these things. And so the question was asked, like, will media be allowed to go? How much media? It's like they still obviously want to keep everything distance. And the commissioner even said, I understand you need to do your jobs too. I mean, you want to stay employed, you want to cover the sport and tell the story and everything. We're still working that out because obviously you'll have broadcasts. They're going to create an international broadcast for things. And so it's going to be basically one feed instead of having multiple feeds like we're used to, where you have multiple feeds, the home and away feeds a lot of times, which are different cameras a lot of times. And international feeds will have one feed to work with and try to go from there, because that's also the other thing, who's going to be announcing all these games and stuff like that, because that's a lot of games they're going to have to bring in people to do. And again, the more things you want, the more people that adds, and the more people creates higher risk, and that's what they want to avoid, especially interaction with players. So I'm very curious how they're going to handle that. I'm sure each team's going to have their own thing. I'd assume the Predators to do kinds of things where they're like, okay, we're going to have a Zoom call, post-game Zoom call, or something like that, because you think of a lot of the home media for the Predators, a lot of us are, say, local, and the outlets that we're a part of don't have the budget if they were allowed to send to the hub city, and also don't have the budget or the ability to be away from home for 2+ months potentially either. So that's all those things that are going into question that we're just concerned and want to know.
Yeah. One thing I heard somebody talking about was like doing some sort of raffle where for each game you could have one fan. Just
can you imagine?
The mic drowned you out. It's like, no, we're not going to let this loud noise come through.
Makes me think of whenever beer league teams, when we're able to play at Bridgestone Arena, and you're able to have fans can come and sit in these sections. Like, you really only need one.
Yeah.
There's going to be 3 people there. But yeah, it's curious. It's been a lot of hockey going on for me here lately.
Yeah, here out of nowhere, you've got all kinds of news to cover. Some very sad.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to University of Huntsville hockey. It's a very sad day. I was able to make a few of those games with you. A lot of good, dedicated fans down there.
And they're trying to save it. It's one of those goals that I think the university set it to where they knew it was going to be difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also the thing where, even if they're able to overcome the dollars that are required, they're still cutting up the conference, and UAH is still left without a dancing partner. Yeah. So even if the financials weren't a major concern, there's kind of a cutoff date anyway.
Right.
So it just seems like an insurmountable obstacle.
Yes, and especially only giving 4.5, 5 days to reach a goal.
They knew if they didn't offer something to those fans,
which is
they would have.
frustrating.
Yeah, they gave them an impossible goal. If there were the ability to grow hockey as a whole across the SEC, where maybe Vanderbilt or UT or any of those other teams could get a D1 team, then you're talking about something. But just the financials don't line up. It's just not possible.
And that's the problem. COVID-19 aside, we need more Division I college hockey teams in the U.S. People say, well, it could be good because now it's going to be more competitive. No, the problem is we are losing, and when I say we, the U.S. is losing good American hockey players that could be playing college hockey to juniors, to Europe, to all these other instances, or they could be getting an education as well as playing, that they want to play college hockey. There just aren't enough spots. That's the problem. There aren't enough spots for a lot of these good kids to play college hockey, so we don't have enough teams. You think about the expansion, and Long Island University is adding, Huntsville taking away, so that's a wash in terms of adding Division I teams. You think of this and how the NHL has expanded, and overall talent, I mean, it's pretty much, it's there. You can't go and add 5 or 6 more teams. You're going to have some dilution of talent. But in terms of college hockey, you need more opportunities for these players to play and to develop. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the expansion because remember, USA Hockey, the number of registered players has grown in ridiculous amounts the past decade.
Yeah.
But they're not places to play.
Exactly. From a developmental standpoint, U.S. Junior is behind, U.S. College is behind, Canadian Junior even. Like you get in those hotbeds like in Boston, like there's a whole lot of talent that goes through that entire area and those various schools in that region, Ivy League. But anywhere else, there's not much. Like even in places like Chicago, like I know Northwestern doesn't have a team.
Right, and Illinois is supposed to be getting one. Minnesota obviously has plenty because of smaller schools in the north and they do well. Michigan has plenty. But the problem that we see is that we just need more. And Arizona State, it's been a great success story. Penn State's been a great success story. But you think of all the money that it took for Penn State to be successful. It helped a lot with recruiting. Arizona State, they're in Arizona. They're going to be okay recruiting. Especially Canadians to come in and play. The Southeast is very much underserved because what would help Huntsville out is if there were more teams, not necessarily even just the Southeast, but in the Midwest, where you look at places like Illinois would be pretty acceptable. Bowling Green was in the conference in the WCHA, and that's the closest team to Huntsville was Bowling Green, Ohio. So you think of what it could do if a team like Alabama, Georgia, and all it would take would be 4 or 5 to have programs, and you have a conference. I think 6 you could do fine, and you could have a conference and be legitimate enough and schedule people enough too, because you're in an area in a vicinity to really build these programs. But they just don't have that, and that was what set everything going in the bad direction. Is these 7 other schools saying, you know what, peace out, Huntsville and 2 Alaska teams. We're going to go and do our own thing and form the CCHA again. Huntsville basically said they applied to be a part of it, but they were not going to get in. They would be the WCHA again. They were doing this because they felt like they were on a different level from UAH. And Mike Corbett even said so. The head coach for UAH said, my record speaks a lot of it. If we had a better record, maybe we could have pushed a little bit better and done this. So there's all those questions that come up.
How much of that just is surrounded by, when you're recruiting for a team, if you're the team where every opponent is going to be like a 6-hour bus ride or more, how well can you recruit in that scenario, which reflects on record. And if you've got a bad record, why are other teams in the area going to, start their own hockey program? And it's just this tidal wave of various things that result in a situation like this.
And it's not going to be the last sport gone from a lot of these schools. We've already seen Bowling Green get rid of the baseball team. Other colleges are going to be cutting programs as well because they're going to be able to use this as an excuse. Because if they're already kind of on the budget cutting table, they're going to be like, well, virus. And
Yeah.
it's a perfect storm of things, because it's going to allow these colleges to be able to do this without teams and their supporters putting up much of a fight, because they just aren't going to be able to at this point. That is sad, because what need more as the population grows, need more opportunities for these kids. As the number of hockey players grow, need more opportunities for the kids. And UAH, they even cut their men's and women's tennis programs out. And the thing is, the UAH hockey program, it was the only D1 program at the school, because they're a D2 school in every other sport. That's how big of a deal it was that they were playing NCAA Division I hockey. Granted, the record didn't show for it, but they were still doing that. And this organization, this team, had 2 Division II national championships to their name. I mean, they've won. They don't have a zero history. That college has won national championships in hockey, just not in D1, and they've made appearances at D1 in the NCAA tournament as well. So it's not like they were just always losers.
Yeah.
It's been a little rough because of everything that's been going on and recruiting and everything else. So it's very frustrating to see that happen, but it's not the end of it, because there's way too many good hockey players in the area. And we're going to see college hockey continue to grow. It's just not doing it at the pace that I want it to grow.
Yeah, it's a good parallel there between like what UAH had accomplished in the early years of the Predators, where it's not a detriment to the coach or the general manager or, that school on the other side of things. The situation they're in, they were making the best of what they could. But, it's just not the environment that's conducive to creating a perennial winner, because of everything we've talked about.
It's rough. Well, switch gears.
Sure.
So I told you, and I think maybe some people know, I haven't talked about it too much because I don't want to bore people online with it, but I knew that Clone Wars was going to end.
Yep.
This year on Disney Plus. They're going to release the 7th and final season of Clone Wars. And so
they already did.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yes, they already did. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh.
So I went and started from the very beginning by watching the Clone Wars movie. And then,
which is so bad.
It's awful. But,
yeah. So the reason it's so awful is that first movie is actually 4 episodes cut up into one movie.
Right. And so I went back, and this has only been a few weeks. I mean, I've been binging it as much as I possibly can. Sometimes watching, 7 or 8 episodes in a night after Alex goes to bed, because she's not going to watch Clone Wars with me. And doing that. So I finally finished season 6, and I've watched the first 2 episodes now of season 7. So I'm not there yet. Obviously, we all know what happens because it's in between movie. But I've said this to you too, is that more and more, I do not want a Jedi Council patch or a logo or anything like that, because those assholes screwed up so much.
Yeah.
What could have been for the galaxy, but because they were blind to it, and their egos wouldn't let them do shit for anybody, that they completely fucked it all up.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's interesting watching this movie or this series, because I feel like it makes the prequel movies better having watched these.
It does, because it does the development of the characters that we didn't get.
Yes, it's everything you didn't get.
And Dave Filoni's a great storyteller too.
Yeah, especially when Clone War or Attack of the Clones was such a bad movie, in my opinion. Like that's one of the worst Star Wars movies ever made. That's like the worst prequel for sure. But this rights the ship, and then you go into Revenge of the Sith, and it just makes that movie so much better.
It really does, and you get to know some of the clones, and it makes you attach yourself to the clones.
Yeah.
As well, where you're like, they didn't ask for this.
No.
And they're beings, and that's the fight that we see so much, especially later on, that they're living creatures, living beings. And also the connection you feel to Ahsoka, who is just completely just not a part of season 6 at all, except for one appearance with Yoda in a vision. I'm like, the hell are you doing? Like, they knew what they were doing, obviously. They wanted you to miss her and want her back and everything, to wrap things up and tie it all together. But it just pisses me off more and more, the blindness of the Jedi Council. This is going full nerd here, nerd rage. Like Mace Windu and even Yoda, who, I enjoy Yoda, but the ego and the blindness to the dark side from those two especially piss me off to no end. I ended season so pissed off when Ahsoka left, season 5.
Yeah.
So pissed off at a freaking animated TV series because of what they did to her and expected her to come back. The hell?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's also this. There's a lot of themes that go into Clone Wars. One of them being that the clones are more than just clones, which is something you see repeated on multiple episodes. The other is how the Jedi affect other parts of the galaxy, both positively and negatively.
Oh yeah.
And that's a big thing beginning to end in Clone Wars is, just all the different ways where they're not seeing all the negative ways that they impact the galaxy because, one of the founding things in the Jedi is, take those bad thoughts and, let go, put them out of your mind. Well, you talk to any therapist, that is not what you're supposed to do. You don't just take those bad feelings and pack them down and just let those sink into your stomach and never resolve them. No, that's not what you do.
And having Palpatine right under your nose running everything. And we knew that was the case, but it shows even more because it is canon, obviously, of how much the war was just for the sake of the war so he could get his final thing of getting what he want with Anakin. I mean, it all really kind of came down to the Sith. And the whole war was completely unnecessary, except he just wanted to happen and kept strewing it along because he wanted to.
Yeah, he wanted to shift focus. He wanted to distract the Jedi. Yeah.
I mean, and that shows, too, the goodness of the evil that they built up within him of the dark side, because I don't think we got enough of that in the prequels either.
Yeah.
Just of him and his meddling. The meddling part is what makes him a good villain, because he's doing it right under their nose, and that's what ticks me off so much, is if you were searching your feelings correctly, Jedi, you would have been able to sense this very quickly and been able to sense what he was doing and maneuvering with Anakin as well the entire time. And I do like how they're continuously amping up, especially in season 5 and 6, amping up the anger within Anakin and how he treats prisoners when they're on a chase with someone and the force choking.
They make him a much more complex character and a lot more likable in that series than he is in any other.
Oh, yeah, because he was overall a good teacher to Ahsoka.
Yeah.
With what he was trying to do and teach something different, which goes all the way back. And I know Dave Filoni touched on this. I've talked with Jack Woods about it as well. The whole thing with Qui-Gon. And goes back to Duel of the Fates. And I love the way Dave Filoni tells this with Qui-Gon. That's why Qui-Gon wasn't on the Jedi Council, because he knew there was something up. He could feel something was up. He didn't want to be clouded from by the dark side from the Jedi, with the Jedi Council in there. But what I love is the Duel of the Fates thing with Darth Maul, the fight with Darth Maul, is that they really are fighting for the fate of Anakin Skywalker, because he does not have a role model in his life. And Obi-Wan was never a father figure. He was a brother. And that is very, very different for how somebody's raised, to not have a father figure of sorts looking over you, but to just have a brother. Yeah, he learned a lot from Obi-Wan, but he didn't have that fatherly instinct like Qui-Gon could sense something as well. So they were dueling for the entire fate that sets up the entire Skywalker saga. Star Wars there too with Qui-Gon, so it goes all the way back to him, and that's what I really do like about it. With Clone Wars, it ties so much of the stuff together more so to build Anakin and Yoda learning how to become a Force ghost as well in season 6. All these little things that we kind of wanted. Clone Wars, an animated series, takes care of a lot of this for us, but also it builds up that whole anger within me of you know what, screw it, gray Jedi for the win. There's no completely right or completely wrong. Everyone has a little bit of gray Jedi in them.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's shown as well, is where Ahsoka's opinion and Anakin's opinion of the Jedi, they're not different, but the solution is different.
Yes.
Which is really interesting and compelling, because, that's kind of the fact of things in all things, is we're not really that far away from each other when it comes down to polarizing opinions necessarily. But the solutions are different.
They are.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed going back and rewatching the series again, leading up to Order 66. Oh, and I'm also diving into that about the clone and the chip and the tumor that they find in the clone, and that it almost they
Yeah.
almost they were so close. Like you were just so close to discovering everything that was going on, and
Yep, keep watching.
yeah, exactly. So I'm really much looking forward to discovering how they kind of tie it in even more.
Yeah.
Because the season's so short overall. I mean, it's half the size of the season of normal ones.
Yeah.
So
those final 4 episodes are some of the best Star Wars experience
I'm looking
of anything. Like it's just great.
I'm really looking forward to it. So it's
all of the Darth Maul stuff in Clone Wars is really fun.
It's intriguing.
Yeah.
It's really intriguing what they were able to do with him to bring him back. It also is just interesting too, some of the dark magic stuff that we get that we're not really exposed to at all in the canon movies. We don't hear any of that, but you're like, it's a galaxy far, far away. Of course, there's some really freaking dark magic going on, I'm sure, somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. People get really upset about stuff like in The Rise of Skywalker. Like, when did they suddenly decide force healing was a thing? And, like, just watch one season of Clone Wars and all the weird shit they go through.
Exactly.
Like, they're only upset about it because it made it into the movies.
Right. It's like, it's canon. They decide you're talking about space wizards. They can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. And, like, I still can watch that movie and have fun, but, like, man, there's...
Yeah. I'm not going to analyze it as much as I am, for instance, Clone Wars, because you can tell with Dave Filoni and George Lucas, because George Lucas plays a huge role in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
He gave them opportunity to dive deeper into a lot of the storylines they've always wanted to cover in Star Wars.
And it's obvious it needed it for that portion of the story.
Absolutely.
People, like, I saw somebody on Twitter talking about, like, oh, I hope they redo the most recent trilogy. It's like, I hope they don't. I want to hear other stories.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways if they do it right to expand beyond this. Now, granted, Rogue One was still connected to the Skywalker saga, but I loved it because it showed a completely different story, and we got to see a character that's in Rogue One in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they tie it together that way, and I'm good with tying things together, but the story focus needs to be on other characters and developing them, even if they're slightly connected, but still completely separate from the universe, and their story arc isn't connected to what's going on in the main saga.
Yeah. I listened to the audiobook of, I think it's just called Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. I'm interested to see what they do with that character in The Mandalorian, because that's something that's talked about. I'd like to see a post-Order 66 movie with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
You'll have to watch Rebels as well, because obviously there's some stuff with her in that series, but her at the beginning of the rebellion would be really interesting. Yeah, there's a whole lot of directions they could go into, and like we don't really know what goes on with that character, but like we hear her voice when Rey is like, you know, all of us are within you, and you hear Ahsoka's voice at one point, which leads you to believe she's dead at that point.
Yeah, she's dead, and so how did she die?
Yeah,
how did she come back to the Jedi way?
Yeah,
sorts.
Well, did she go away from the Jedi, or did the Jedi go in a different direction?
Boom.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, and that's not really a spoiler because that's something that's not really answered. But you know, Ahsoka sees more of this is what the Jedis should be doing per what Jedi say, what we're taught, but that's not the direction we go in. So I'm going to go in that direction.
No, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So I'm glad with The Mandalorian too. And folks, if you have not watched the Disney show, that's gosh, what's it called again? Behind the curtain.
Disney Gallery.
Disney Gallery, yes, Disney Gallery with The Mandalorian. You're getting so much perspective from the directors of it, and it is fantastic and mesmerizing. You're getting that real inside look. If you enjoy those types of things behind the scenes, but getting real nerd talk in the development of this, you'll love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Even just hearing from the directors, like what moments in the series are important to them, like hearing Watiti talk about Yoda brings the X-Wing out of the bog when Luke couldn't do it. He's just this tiny little creature. And Luke says, wow, I can't believe it. That is why you fail.
Yeah. Chills right
Yeah.
there.
Sassy Yoda was something we needed back really, really bad. And that's something we did get in The Last Jedi. A lot of people annihilate that movie. But there was no sassy Yoda in the prequels, and that's something we had a lot of in Empire Strikes Back, which makes that character really good. The fact that Yoda's going to sit there and he's going to talk crap,
Yep, and it doesn't matter who, he's going to talk crap to you.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad we actually had some hockey and Star Wars to talk about.
Yep.
So, yeah, more to come, I'm sure, as more news will break shortly when we get more things figured out. So,
yeah. Once we graduate away from the plan for the plan and more into like, here's the plan of how we implement the plan, because the plan is official now. So here's our plan to proceed with the plan.
When she goes from suck to blow.
Yeah. All right, Justin. Well, thank you.
All right, Cameron. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.